All right, welcome back, everybody, to Culz Interviews. Today, we got a really exciting guest with us, and one that, we're going to talk a whole host of subjects, I am sure, but I know you guys probably will recognize him from either his books, some TV appearances, movie appearances, but that's Reverend Michael J.S. Carter. And so I will turn it over to him and let him introduce himself a little bit better than I did, because obviously he knows himself already. So,
Took a while. Well, first of all, thank you, brothers, for having me on. To the audience, I'm Reverend Michael Carter. Um, I serve a Unitarian congregation here in North Carolina. I'm an experiencer. I'm a consultant on the History Channel's Ancient Aliens. It's good to be. I'm a dad, which is very exciting, and it's my pleasure to be here. And thank you for taking time out of your evening to tune in.
yeah, no, thank you for joining us. I don't even know where to start because we've seen you in so many different ways, and we've read your books and stuff. So, let's kind of go back to the beginning because obviously, at least having my previous knowledge, I know that you didn't always start out being like this believer. Like it was very
Oh,
different. So, do
no.
you want to run the audience through that?
Sure. And it's probably, I think everybody I talk to that goes through these transformations, whether it's from anything, doesn't always have to be contact experiences. It's almost the same thing. I was raised in the African American Baptist tradition, American Baptist, and I was very devout. That's what got me into being a minister in the first place. Part of that as a kid is you want to please your parents, but I genuinely, no BS, I enjoyed churches. Um, and so I started branching out. I was going to I was in love when I was a teenager with someone went to the Catholic Church, St. Ambrose Catholic Church. So I went there, Methodist Church, Lutheran churches. I just felt at home there. And I couldn't explain it then, but I love religion. Not for what it is, but for what it could be. But back then I didn't know. And I just started watching Star Trek, brother, about 5 years ago. Really, I started watching Deep Space Nine because I love Cisco. He was a man of color. And I just love all the diversity because something in me knew that that's how we're meant to be. We don't have to be afraid of difference. Um, so I remember someone asking me. I grew up in Baltimore, and so I remember. So I don't remember the context, but I remember I'm in downtown Baltimore on Howard Street, and someone brought up science fiction and said to me, "You don't believe in UFOs or anything?" And I remember saying no, and I remember the expression on their face was like, and I don't know how we got on the subject, and I said because it's not in the Bible. And so I was one of many people who thought that. And that's how it started. And then when I had, looking back, one of my favorite theologians is Kierkegaard, who was a devout Christian. I don't know if I would call myself a devout Christian, but um, and he said life is lived forward, but it's only understood backwards. And so, looking back, I was having these experiences where I'd be in my room just staring, and there'd be like these orbs, and they were different colors, and they looked like circles. They were circles. They had like a whole, like, I don't know whether they were disembodied intelligences or whatever. I could see the three dimensionality of my room. You know, um, I could see auras around things, which I still do, but I thought everybody did. So, um, and I had nosebleeds, and I think maybe I had an implant or I was visited, but I didn't know them. Remember, living forward, looking back, hindsight's always 2020. But on December 28th, 1989, when I saw this gray individual in my room, there was no doubt because I didn't say, well, is that an orb or this was a person, an individual. And now, in between that time, I must be clear, I was drifting away from the Baptist tradition. The theology just didn't work for me anymore. The us and them, saved and not saved, and that kind of thing. I have friends, and my parents are still Baptists, and it works for them. And so I would never uh, badmouth it because it has value. It just didn't work for me. But I was studying existential philosophy. I was studying, metaphysics and that kind of thing. And so I was moving away from organized religion. In my case, it was the Baptist tradition. And then when I started having these contacts, that was like what pushed it over the edge. For my more conservative brothers and sisters, theologically, they would say, "Well, see, that's the devil. It took you away from God." But I don't believe that, and I don't think that's true at all. At least not for me. So and I started writing. I wound up doing energy healing work, and my lifetime. I was an actor in New York, and I was living a fast life. I was drugging and sexing, and I was talented, and these things, and these beings, these individuals never said you shouldn't be doing that. They never reprimanded, but it was like something awakened in me that this is not really what I want to do. I always wanted to serve, and I was not being fulfilled. So I decided to change my path, and that was the beginning.
I mean, as I was listening to you talk about that, and just because personally I've never seen an extraterrestrial. I have seen something weird in the sky, but
Hmm.
most of my experiences are with like spirits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But when you were talking like drifting away from the church, and then that's when a lot of this was starting to happen, it
Yes.
was making me think, because we used to go to one church and we just stopped because they were very they would call the house even and be like, hey, you didn't donate enough, blah blah blah. And so that's when we stopped. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's when I think a lot of my experiences. So I don't know if there's just a weird connection I made when I was like listening to you, and I was like, huh, that's kind of weird. Like our timelines are kind of similar.
Brother, no, but it's very. Two people joined the church Easter Sunday, and young couple, attractive couple. I don't talk about this with everybody, but they were telling me how they got to where they are now, to the Unitarian Church. Universalist Church was very progressive. And it was similar. It may have been an incident, what you said. It could have been just an inner knowing that this is not where I need to be anymore, and just drifting away, just opening the mind. Oscar Wilde said, I'm paraphrasing, that once you stretch the mind, it can never go back to its original dimensions. You can't look back. And usually, like I said, it doesn't have to, it could be an NDE, it could be an OBE, it could be a near death, obviously. I know someone who had a therapist who was jogging in San Francisco early one morning and saw the sun come up and was just so in awe of it, uh, that he had a mystical experience. He said that I felt like I was one with everything, with the sun, with the trees, with the cars. And, but once you have that experience, it's hard to go back
Hmm.
because a different reality. You've been shown a different reality. And most people don't see that. Doesn't make them bad people, but most people don't see that for lots of reasons. Bad religion, um, we're so focused on, we have to work, you have to feed your family, and sometimes you don't take those moments. But once you've been opened up like that, it's really different. It's hard to go back.
Yeah, I mean, I totally relate. Like I said, with my ghost experiences, because like I'm still super scientific, but I'm like, I mean, there's no explanation for that.
But that
And
is the science.
yeah.
That's science. You don't want science to be a religion where it's so dogmatic, and some people make it that way.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's some things you can't explain, and a lot of the old Newtonian physics is gone. Quantum is in now, right? And you know that it used to be science was show me, and I'll believe you. Now it's believe, and I'll show you, because quantum theory has opened up, and that's some things, even with where we are stuck, collectively speaking, in Newtonian 21st century science. And these beings that we're encountering, whether they're ghosts or not, they defy all of that. You know, they can walk through walls. They can, you know, you can have it's consciousness. Okay, we're talking about consciousness, um, and so we're trying to get this paradigm shift, and it's hard because people resist it. You know, people resist it, but for fear, for tenure, you know, if you spend 25 years teaching science one way and now you got UFOs and you got poltergeist stuff and you got all this stuff that's been around longer than we have probably, and you've made your fortune, or you know, you got your tenure, you got your home, you got your cars, you're kind of comfortable, and all of a sudden this comes up. It's hard to say, you know what, maybe I was wrong.
Yeah, and like you said, a lot of it too is just the fear of being ridiculed or made fun of. And luckily, a lot of this is
Mhm.
changing slowly,
Mhm.
but it is, I mean, we've seen it, at least for me, like looking back from when I was a kid, like people would, if I said anything about the ghost stuff, they'd make fun of me.
Yeah.
But now, like, all those people are watching ghost shows and they want to go do this and that. And so we've seen that switch. But a lot of it might also have to do with just like traditions and where you grow up and stuff like that. Because, like, one of our friends grew up on the Navajo reservation. So they have very different traditions or ways of thinking.
Sure.
Or like one of our friends was Hispanic, and like she was really interested in like the ghost, but at the same time she's like, I don't want to hear it because it's all demonic, you know. And
Yes.
so it's still,
Yes.
there's still a lot of that going on
It
too.
is. It is. It is. I remember 25 years ago, and I call this progress. Again, more conservative brothers and sisters, theologically speaking, UFOs didn't exist. These beings didn't exist. Now they exist, but they're demonic. But they do exist.
Yeah.
Human evolution is glacial sometimes, but 20 years ago they didn't exist at all. And that's just, but things are speeding up. Our government not as transparent maybe as I would like them to be, but they're talking about UAPs, and you know, they're in the New York Times, they're in the Washington Post, they're in Newsweek. I don't know if you saw just a couple of days ago that some UFOs were flying over a nuclear power plant in Leningrad, around Ukraine, you know, in that general area. And so who'd have thunk it that, you know, our mainstream journalism is talking about UFOs.
That's pretty
Yeah,
exciting.
It is. It
it's
is. It's a
very
long road.
exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. So life does happen. I mean, life changes, but it's slow and there's a lot of fear. But I mean, obviously, especially for at least for me, um, my focus is on religion, and you know, we're still not talking about it. Generally speaking, we're not having conversations I think we need to be having, but I think that'll change, and hopefully, I'll be able to be part of that change.
Yeah, and we'll get to your experiences because you've had quite a few.
Yeah,
But I want to, I mean, because you brought up like obviously the religion part, and I
yeah.
know that's probably got to be a super hard one to bring up in that setting. And it took me a while to find a pastor where I could talk, and
Hmm.
that was like our first like unofficial interview. Was just going to his house, and he told us some of his experiences. We told him ours, and it was just really neat to have that, you know, that connection and see, hey, you know, it's okay to talk about that now. And
Yes.
but I mean, obviously when you had your first one, how did that go?
Well, I was like the government. I just didn't tell anybody. So, you know, I had a support group that I was in. Um, but you know, I was kind of living a double life that way, and there were times when I confided in people who weren't in that circle that I was traveling in. I remember one minister friend of mine who will remain nameless, but um, she said to me, I was going to an anti-racism training, and I was in Boston, in Massachusetts, and I told her something said I should tell her. And she said, Michael, I believe that you saw what you believe what you say. She said, but if you ever want to have a career, you can never tell that story to anybody again. And there was a woman in my church who was a big donor. She gave a lot of money to the church. and we didn't get along so well. Now we kind of do, but um, this is about 5 years ago. She tried to have me fired. She said she must have saw Ancient Aliens. She said I turned on the TV one night and I saw my minister there talking about little green men. And she took it to the board of trustees of our church. And fortunately for me, they said, we don't see anything wrong. He's not preaching it from the pulpit. He's not forcing it on down anyone's throat. And he may be right. So they stood up for me, which was really, really, I was really appreciative, because any other church would probably fire me. Yeah.
No, and that's because you're in the Carolinas, right?
Yep, I'm down here in the Bible Belt.
Yeah, so that's
Not,
going
we're
to be
not on
even
the
harder.
buckle of it, but moving down here from New York City, man. It was a big change.
Yeah. And, we've talked to some other guests, one of which I know you wrote a section in his book, Wallace Wagner.
Yes, Wallace,
Hmm.
good brother. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's nice to see that even down there, it's starting to get like accepted and better to talk about it.
I can't tell you. I'm surprised when people come up to me. Occasionally, I'll be out in public and someone will say, "Oh, I saw you on Ancient Aliens." My wife and I will be out, and that's always nice for the ego. I mean, I love it. I'm glad. But my point being is that people, you would look at them and go, "My God, you watched that show?" You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Hmm.
even I have people in some of the most straight-laced looking people. Oh man, I watched that show all that. Yeah, and so that means it's getting out there. I know people knock the show, and yeah, it's not perfect, but it has changed the conversation, and it's been out there for a while, and people watch it, and it gets people to think.
Yeah, it's
And
been out for a long time
yeah,
now,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
which is unusual for like anything alien related on media. It seems like we got really into Project Blue Book, and after two
yeah.
seasons, it was just like pulled. And I mean, its
Yes,
ratings were great and everything, but they just didn't want to do it anymore.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I understand it too. I think I do, but yeah, but it's also timing. But I watched Project Blue Book. I just watched it. It was streaming, and I
Mm.
really enjoyed it. I think it took me maybe one or two episodes to get into it. But also with that though, it's heavy. It's heavy stuff. I mean, they're talking about government collusion, and they may bring it up on Ancient Aliens, but they don't go too deep into it down that rabbit hole, but they do bring it up. But Project Blue Book was coming out basically saying you're being lied to.
Yeah,
Okay. And it's hard to keep the lights on when you talk about the government too much like
yeah,
True.
yeah. They definitely, they definitely don't like that too much. I mean, we found it hard even just on YouTube. If we go too many, alien episodes in a row, it's just like, hey, where'd our audience go? And
yeah.
it's not that they're not watching; they just don't know that we're putting things out.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I've been on some shows where weird things have happened, like all of a sudden the sound went off, or when you're getting into and you can't prove that that's happening, but that it could, because we live in a surveillance state, so things are monitored. That's just the way it is, and
Mhm.
that's just the times we live in. They're exciting times,
Yeah,
and I'm glad we're here.
yeah, no, definitely. It seems like an age of discovery where so many cool things and expeditions are still ongoing. But let's kind of get back a little bit in time and talk about that first experience. And what was it, 1989? If I'm correct.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they started happening. I've had years in between, and I'm in one of those periods now. But I'll go back December 28th, 1989. Was living in New York City. Went on vacation with the woman, my girlfriend at the time, who became my first wife. We're still very close, and she still lives in the same building there. We went to Cancun, and there was a day trip to the pyramids at Chichen Itza and Tulum. um, and we said, why not? Let's go. And I wanted to see those pyramids. And we got back. It was fantastic. And you had to ask, how where are they getting where are the Mayans? Where are they getting this information? And they knew about the equinoxes and It was intense. The solstices, and so we came home, and that night I had been invited to a get together down in Hell's Kitchen, and Sandy said, "No, I'm tired." We got off at JFK. It was cold too. And so, I said, well, I want to go because I wanted to gloat. My friends were freezing there, what's off. And we just came back from 85 degrees. The skin was copper, the hair was light. I said, let me go. So I went down there and she stayed home. And, you've heard that story. I went down there, no alcohol was served, just tons of deviled eggs, which I enjoyed very much.
Yeah,
And
they're the best.
oh man, oh, I love them. So anyway, I all that cholesterol. I love it. Anyway, so anyway, I came back home. And to this day, I don't know whether I just felt someone in the room or, I had to go to the bathroom. But when I turned around, because I sleep on my stomach, this person was there. Now, he didn't have, I'm saying he, it could have been a she, it could have been it. Uh, he didn't have a robe on. I have someone, the beings that I've seen, a friend of mine makes them for me. She's an artist in Nevada. Her name is Carol McLeod. She made this for me because I wanted him to look like a Buddha. But he was this color. He was at the edge of my bed, and I was scared. I can't tell you how scared I was. Sandy didn't wake up, couldn't wake up, and he had on a jumpsuit that looked like Reynolds wrap. It looked like aluminum foil. He was about 3.5, 4 feet tall tops. The classic story. Very spindly body on his head was huge. And he looked, and around him was a blue light, like a lapis blue, cobalt blue. And around that my whole room was lit up. Little caveat here, when I wrote my last book, here it is, Transformation of the Experiencer, I told the story. And when I sent it to Sandy, she said, I've read your book. And she said, I remember that night. She said, I have never seen you so frightened. And she said, I remember seeing these little shadowy beings in the room. She said, but a voice kept telling me just to go to sleep. And I said, after all these years, you never told me that. She never told me that. But I felt like I got in a fetal position and I pulled the covers up over my head. And I felt like I was outside. Now, we were in the Excelsior Hotel, still there, 45 West 81st Street between Columbus Avenue and Central Park West. And I heard this whoosh, whoosh, like the wind was blowing and temperature changed. And it felt like I was outside. And I finally grew a pair. And when I pulled the covers down, nothing, quiet like this. I woke Sandy up. I was flipped out. She's a very spiritual woman. She was a very understanding woman. She still is. I say was. And she didn't make fun of me. She didn't say, well, you're some kind of nut. So I told some friends of mine about it. And a friend of mine said, I want you to catch the subway down to the East Village in Alphabet City. You're going to, around St. Mark's Place, she said, you're going to see a mural and tell me if what you saw, if what you see on the mural is what you saw. And it was someone had painted some gray, spray painted. So every month, uh, new and full moon, so that's twice a month, I got a visit. And they would paralyze me. My eyes were open, but I couldn't move. They didn't talk to me, the gray people. But they would show me pictures in my head, showed me a past life.
Like
Uh,
telepathy.
yeah, yeah. Well, they showed me pictures.
Hmm.
When I met the reptilian person, he spoke to me. But they showed me pictures of a past life and of a future event that happened. Um, that was freaky. Nothing sexy, no prophecy, just something that I was speaking at a place, and I wound up years later actually speaking there and saying the same words that they showed me I was going to say. And but at that time I started I started doing the energy work, the healing. I started not needing a lot of sleep because every time you meet them, they vibrate at such a high level. I was had that energy with me. Um, my hair grew fast, my skin, my nails and stuff grew fast. I felt more intelligent. I guess now people call it downloads, but I don't know if I had any downloads, but I know I just felt more intelligent. But my heart felt more open, and that was most important to me. My heart was just, I felt more loving towards people. I felt more accepting and tolerance. Now, that didn't mean that I wasn't working on that, because I was. My meditations and reading and studying, but those experiences expedited it. And then later on, I met the reptilians twice. In 2019, and we can go over. I met a praying mantis person. Um, in 2013, I had a healing. I had a blood clot, um, and I met this um, Nordic individual. He healed a blood clot that I had, which was very interesting. So I was having these experiences. I was not, and I was writing stuff. I was more open about it, but still not too open. And so my life was changing. I had left the theater, and I devoted my life to my ministry and healing and that kind of thing. Got married, been married a few times. I have a child now. Well, she's not a child; she's a grown woman. She's 17 years old. Um, so that's what I had. It just changed my life for the better. And then some years went by, and nothing happened. And then in 2019, I told you a psychic told me I was going to meet this praying mantis person, and I said, "Wow, okay, really?" And I did. They said in 3 days I see you meeting them, and he popped up in my room. So I'm just giving you the highlights of stuff, and I've just dedicated my life to love the way I understand it, to learning to love, to trying to share that love, um, and at the same time, to continue to grow and to learn and to enjoy my life too, to have fun in my life. Because sometimes you can forget that. You can get so caught up into stuff. And I'm pretty, I was in therapy. I was in therapy for coming from a dysfunctional family, but I also could talk to my therapist about some of this stuff. So it's very well integrated in my life. Yes, I have a hard time at night by myself. My wife was away um, for 2 weekends in a row, but this was for 25 years. And it's not that they've done anything bad. They did something to hurt me once, and I asked them not to, and they did stop. But it's like post-traumatic stress. At night, if I'm home alone, um, it's a little difficult for me sometimes to sleep because the suddenness in which they appear. I could be lying down facing this way, and I could turn around and bam, they're there. That your nervous system, it's hard to
Mhm.
deal with that. Plus, some of them look pretty bizarre, and some of them look so that kind of thing. I mean, I do, but I like, for instance, I'll leave the light on in my bedroom till the very last minute if I'm home alone before I go to sleep, as if the light's going to keep them from coming. Of course not.
Right.
But those kinds of things.
Yeah,
So
no, it totally reminds me of me. I grew
yeah,
up, like I said, in that house, and I had so many experiences, and you're just like, it's not like they happened. I mean, there was a lot, but they didn't all happen all the time. But you never knew when it was going to happen. So I remember I
yeah,
just close my eyes and just sit there, like, and I guess because it's also like your most vulnerable state, like you're in
yeah.
bed, like not expecting, and then next, like, I'll
They're
tell you
there.
one, yeah, this one, and it's the one that I can see as clear as day. But me and my brother were so scared we'd always sleep in my mom's room until my dad would get home, and he would carry us into bed.
Mhm.
And one night, I looked over and it looked like him at the door, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna scare him," because we were all kind of on edge. We all were experiencing stuff. And then all of a sudden, it looked like he leaned down and was like, it looked like locking the door, which was weird because that door didn't have a lock. And I was like, looking, and it was like the thing like it comprehended I was watching it, because then it just like went up like this and just like turned, and that's when I realized it wasn't my dad. And it had like spiky hair, like I could see its cheekbones, and had like oval, like purple eyes with like
Hmm.
a blue haze around it.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Wow.
so, yeah, I can totally relate. Like,
Yeah.
it freaks you out.
Yeah, you have to be there to know what
Yeah.
it's about. And and I know people say to me, well, did you ask them where they came from? I mean, you're not, I didn't have the presence of mind to do that. I was just trying to, my nervous system was trying to make sense of what is happening here. And they would touch me and try to calm me down, or they would. I remember the reptilian brother, and I know he was a male because his voice was like, and he said, "Don't be afraid." But that's easy for you to say. You just walked in through my wall, and
Yeah.
look at the way you look. You know, so those are the things. But I wouldn't trade it, and it has changed my life. But like I said, for listeners, I was working towards this. I just don't want you to think that all of a sudden the magic wand and I was working towards my spirituality, peeling the onion, doing those meditating, which I said, doing those types of things. Um, and these things started happening.
Like you said, I mean, some of them you said looked human, but then like one looked like a mantis. And I mean, a giant mantis, I'm sure has got to be like terrifying.
It
And
was
I know the,
terrifying. It
yeah.
was. It was. It was. But they were anthropomorphic. They had arms and legs.
Mhm.
It was. Yeah. I'm thinking. I can almost see it now. But I just look at where I was then and where I am now. And, there's a desert and the sea between the two. Because I was just living a fast life. I was self destructing. Um, and again, they never told me you shouldn't do that. But after the visits, I got this feeling, this knowing that life could be more than just you being a party guy and trying to be famous or whatever it is you were doing.
Yeah, like a spiritual growth, and I
Mhm.
know that's something that you've talked about. We've recently had an interview with a couple authors that did a look at like post traumatic growth after the Silver Bridge incident, and so I just find that really fascinating, because I think a lot of times, and this is what my dad has always told me, is no matter what life throws at you, it's how you look at it and how you want to do it. And that's something you were saying. I was like, oh, this like totally connects.
Yeah, yeah. Life is, at least I have found in my 66 years on, well, 65 summers, I'll be 66 this summer. These 65 summers on the planet is that life is how you respond to it, not react, but how you respond. Yes, we all react, but as we get older and wiser, you learn to, hopefully you learn to respond, because everybody sees things differently. You have to find out who you are and how you fit in the cosmos. Einstein said that the most important question that you can ask is the universe a friendly place? Because the way you answer that question will be the way you live your life. And if you think life is about scarcity and it's about fear and it's about not having enough, and that's what you're going to mirror back, right? It's quantum theory. But if you look at it as an adventure, that there's going to be some peaks and valleys. How can I navigate this? What lessons are there to learn? It's a totally different experience. That's why you can have two people go through the same experience, whatever that may be, and you can get two very different responses to the same stimuli,
Mhm.
because it's how you process it. And I met people who have had cancer and say this was a wake up call. This was a great teacher for me. And you can meet someone who says, why me? The universe is against me. This is not fair. This is a same diagnosis, but different responses.
Mhm.
Not wrong or right, but just two different responses.
Just different processing of
Yes.
what's going on.
Yeah. Not wrong or right.
Yeah. No, and I saw that recently. Sam Neill, the actor who played Alan Grant,
Hmm.
was diagnosed, and a bunch of people are reaching out to him. He's like, guys, I'm still alive. It's about the living.
It
I'm
is.
just enjoying each day. And that's what it's got to be
And
about.
that's what it is. And so for me, and I get it, but people are, did you see those lights in the sky? And was that a triangular craft, or was that one of ours or one of theirs? I think all those are interesting things, but I think this whole phenomenon is asking us to grow up spiritually.
Mhm.
And so we're focusing on the wrong things. But that's just my opinion. It's not my own. I'm not the only one who feels that way, because the beings that I have met and stories that I've read, the majority of them are trying to say, look, you're destroying your planet. You're going to destroy each other. You're ignorant. You're primitive. You got to find a better way. So that's a spiritual thing. That's a spiritual component to this. It's much more than, and I get it. Propulsion systems and back engineering and time travel. That's all wonderful, but you're missing it, man, because all that stuff that's not going to save us. We're going to destroy ourselves with this technology and the fear that we have. And I think this phenomenon, well, John Mack talked about it and others. Stephen Greer talks about it, that this is about um, how do we grow up and start taking care and be good stewards of this planet and of each other, and some type of fairness and justice and equity, and not, you know, just what we're doing to the planet. And I guess, we're just not ready to pay the price of the ticket yet. But it's not about what we're being told it's about.
Well, and I know one part was like talking about love, and you're like, how do you describe that?
Well, love is one of those words that can kind of lose its meaning and has different meanings to different people. Paul talks about it in Corinthians. Um, the definition of love that I like, and the Buddhists, that's why they use the word compassion, which is easier to wrap your mind around, I guess, in some ways. I like the late author M. Scott Peck's definition of love, which he used in The Road Less Traveled. When I extend myself for the growth of another being, he says human being, I'd broaden that to sentient being. But when I extend myself, when I go that extra mile, when I'm extending myself, my energy, not only, but when I'm helping you, that's my definition of love. Because not only is it selfless, but it's also intelligent, because I get it that when I'm reaching out to help you, I'm also helping me. There's no separation between you and me. And what I do to you, what I do to this planet, I'm doing to myself. So I like that definition. He just says, when I extend myself for the growth of another being. Um, I like that. I mean, there's so many definitions, but that makes sense to me. Because there's also dysfunctional love. If you grew up in a dysfunctional household, what you thought was love may not have been love, but you grow up with that, and you don't realize it's not love until you're lucky or something happens to wake you up.
Mhm.
Um, because basically we've all grown up with conditional love. I love you as long as you behave the way I think you, and if you don't, that love's taken away. But unconditional love doesn't do that. Unconditional love is about accepting. I don't have to agree with you. I don't have to agree with your politics. I don't have to, but I would be there for you. It's not like let's all just sing kumbaya and hold hands. There's a justice component to it. There's a fairness component to it. And I have a woman in my congregation. She's been abused and love. She says, I just can't really resonate with that word, but I do resonate with compassion. And she's following a Buddhist path. But yeah, whatever word works for you. But that's what it's about. I think that's what this is all about.
Yeah, and like you said, helping other people too. You
All
know,
beings,
yeah,
dogs, cats, whales, fish,
the earth.
birds, the
Yeah,
earth. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I think that's something that's getting better, and it's something me and Sam have talked about with the UFO community. Is it's for a long time it's been so hard to work together, and maybe because you like, have you seen that, or is it getting easier? Or
No, I have seen that, Keegan, and I did. I'm going back to speak in Michigan, Lake Houghton. It's called Michigan UFO Con. The point I'm trying to make is that I'll be there speaking about UFOs and spirituality. There are people there talking about Bigfoot. There's going to be some people there talking about poltergeist and ghost, and there'll be people there talking about the grays or whatever. And so, because I believe all of this is connected, and so rather than us competing with each other or not, that's what I love about it is that you have speakers who are experts, for lack of a better word, in all these fields, and we're all there. We're all going to be there for that weekend. And because usually, the UFO people stay on this side, Bigfoot people stay on that side, poltergeist, and we're like in different camps. But I think there's a through line with all of this, and it's about reality is much, 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 much more vast than we can comprehend.
Mhm. No, and that's something we went to the Roswell Festival last year, and it was so cool because I mean, obviously you got all the alien stuff, but then you got some sci-fi stuff. There was
Yeah,
some like ghost stuff.
yeah,
There's even like the Billy the Kid history, and just to see it all like working together and everyone smiling and laughing and having a good time, it's so refreshing to
it
see.
is. It is. And well, that's love in the
Mhm.
sense of love brings people together. I guess hate would too, but you can't sustain that. But yeah, yeah, whatever's going to bring you together is usually coming from a higher vibration. Put it like that.
Yeah. And before I completely hijack it from Sam, I know he was wanting to talk more about some of the beings that you were lucky enough to like experience and see up close. So I'll turn it over to him for a little bit.
So what was like essentially between the different like kind of beings that you came across, was all of their energy the same, or did you notice like a significant or like at least slight difference between the different like sentient beings?
That's a great question, Sam. I did not notice a difference in those things. Partly because of the fear factor. All I know is that they were vibrating at a really high frequency, and how did I know that? Was that um, I would go days, especially with the Greys and um, with all of them, but especially in the Nordic brother here, I could go days afterwards with little to no sleep. It's just like I just absorbed that energy. And I also noticed the physiological changes. One was lack of sleep, hair growing. I mean, I got long hair, I cut it, but it's but and just the it was like I felt lighter, um, not only physically but emotionally. Um, I just felt I trusted being vulnerable. It was easier for me to say, I love you. I'm scared. I don't know. One of the things that's brought me great pleasure in my life and peace, it was like an ego death for me. I'm not saying I don't have an ego, but I didn't have as much. And I and meditating, and I'm drawn more to Eastern philosophy, but the need to be right. That was the big thing. I just gave up having to be right. And I can't tell you how peaceful that has made my life. So it was just a more wiser energy, a more mature energy for me. And that's what I got from all of that.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
along with the fear. But
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
what they taught me And they didn't sit down and say this, but I talked to myself and I said, Michael, you have nothing to fear from these beings. What have they done to you to make you fear? They're bizarre looking, some of them, yes. The suddenness and the frequency of which they were visiting, yes. But my life had actually gotten better. And so what it made me do, Sam, what it allowed me to do was I said, where else in your life, Michael, do you let fear stand in the way? Do you let maybe the way somebody looks stand in the way? Because that's what I was doing. And it was a big lesson. It also, and it also had me looking at scripture differently, looking at the Bible and the Quran and other sacred texts. It changed it rocked my whole world. And that's where it took me. That's where it took me. It was
It's
it
really
was it
cool.
was an inside journey.
It's awesome. Yeah, I found it really fascinating reading your like portrayal of UFOs in the Bible because I've heard like I've read a couple of books about that and like each one explains it differently and like kind of I don't know. I like the difference between how like each person like portrays it and notices the certain things about it and all that. It's always really fascinating to me because I definitely grew up, I guess, as Wallace would say, kind of like forced Christian because like I was
Yep.
kind of forced into it, and then like I don't know. I liked the like kind of more interactive side of it when we were like making arts and crafts, but as far as like the thing behind it, I was like not a fan of. So as soon as I could not go to those, I stopped going to those. It was always fascinating. Like the stories were always interesting, but like they never explained some of the other stuff. Like when you actually like look more into it, like Wallace and Ken were saying, uh, they kind of have their agenda, and so like they read like the passage, but then they talk about a specific part and leave out the parts that like seem like people were being conversing with like other beings, like extraterrestrial beings. It was always interesting to like kind of experience that in a way because I was just always like, well, what about like this kind of stuff?
hmm hmm Yeah, and that's the thing about religion. Well, people of the book. I'm talking about the three monotheistic religions: Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. It's what you bring to the text. It's the literal level. It's the what's not being said. Jesus talked about, there were stories where Jesus would talk to the people in one way and give them parables, and when he went back with the disciples, he would tell them the real meaning. Do you know what I mean? So it's
Mhm.
meeting people at their map of the world. And then there is the metaphysical part of the text as well. But we all bring to it what we all bring our own biases to it. We all bring our own biases to it. And so I was trained that that was okay. I was trained to read the Bible like a newspaper. Who, what, when, where, how, and why. For instance, when I read Luke, Luke was not Jewish. Luke was a Greek physician. Luke, as well as Matthew too, uh, they were trying to tell Rome that you have nothing to fear from us. So they're always writing with that in mind. Rome, Jesus is not a threat to you. He's not a threat. Him being what we would call the Son of God, talking about them, they're not a threat. John wrote, he was exiled on Patmos, on the island of Patmos. So he's writing from that perspective. Paul was writing. Paul was Jewish, but he was a Roman citizen, so he could get away with stuff that Jesus couldn't get away with, because Paul was a citizen of Rome. When he was arrested, he was treated a certain way. You can go back and read it. So um, you have to keep that in mind. You have to keep the time, what what was going on at the time, who was writing, why. But we don't, usually, I learned that in my seminary, but usually people, um, they just say, well, this is what it said and that's what it meant. For instance, the Ten Commandments were just for the Jewish people. They weren't for everybody. And it was like 100, it was several hundred commandments, and they narrowed it down to those 10. But that was just for the Jewish people. You didn't covet your Jewish neighbor's wife. You didn't murder your Jewish neighbor. You didn't, you honored your father and mother if they were Jewish. Because if that was true for everybody, they wouldn't have gone into the land of Canaan and killed all those people. You know, you have Yahweh, who, what kind of God is concerned about whether you're circumcised or not? What kind of God is so preoccupied with whether you intermarry or not? What kind of God gets angry and jealous? And, so you have to say, I don't want to worship that kind of God. I don't want to do that. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I'm just saying, so when you start asking those questions, you can get in trouble, but you're just using your knowledge and you're using your own intellect. And some people would find that threatening. But you have to ask, look, what kind of God says, go into the land of Canaan? There are already people there, and take it. I'm giving this land to you. Well, you didn't tell the Canaanites.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No.
And I'm not saying that to knock it. I'm just saying let's go a little deeper. Let's just go a little deeper. Ask the questions. There are people already living there. They're talking about dashing a baby's head against the stone. That doesn't sound like love. That sounds like an astronaut to me with an anger management problem. So that's what got me thinking along those lines. Everywhere, was it Gabriel? He's got a great job. Everywhere he goes, a woman gets pregnant. He visits Mary, she's pregnant. He's also in the Quran. He visits John the Baptist, and I'm being facetious, but it's a great gig. Everywhere he goes, someone gets pregnant. But, okay, if you take if you everywhere you see angel, if you put extraterrestrial there, the Bible makes more sense. Nowhere in the Bible does it say angels have wings. Now, I want to be clear to the audience. I'm not saying there's no such thing as angels. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying, nowhere in the Bible does it say these people have wings. I believe our ancestors were trying to tell us that these beings flew.
That's like the only way they knew how.
Yeah.
To say it, because the technology was so wondrous. It was godlike. It was magical. You see, it makes a lot of sense. Jesus comes on a cloud. He leaves on a cloud. The pillar of cloud by day, the pillar of fire by night. We have the Exodus story. We have the flying chariots with Ezekiel, what he's trying to describe, and Elijah. These things are in the sky. So automatically they are unidentified and they're flying. That's the definition of a UFO. If you look in the Mahabharata and the Upanishads, in the Hindu scriptures, they talk about Vimanas, these flying machines, these aerial machines. If you look at
like Greek mythology, even.
Yeah, these gods, they're very human. They have sex. They get drunk. They do some of the Anunnaki. If you look at these beings come down from the sky, the Elohim. Genesis 6. They get the earth women pregnant. They have a lot of human like traits, but they have the technology. And some of them are deeply spiritual beings. And so it makes sense. And if you look at Native American, whether it's the Western tribes, the Hopi and the Lakota or the Cherokee, the Cherokee and the Hopi both say we come from the Pleiades. They call them the star people.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's right there if you do the research. I mean, could be wrong, but I don't think we are wrong. I think that researchers who have pieced this together, and that these beings have probably, I'm not saying they did it intentionally, maybe Yahweh did, or some other people like Yahweh, but um, they started our religions. Well, we started it, but we worship them.
Mhm.
I mean, how could you not?
Yeah, especially back in those times.
Yeah, how could you not? They were godlike.
Right. Yeah, it was fascinating. I just watched some of the Expedition Unknowns, obviously because Easter was here. They were doing all the Moses ones,
Mm-hmm.
and it was so cool to see all that stuff. Speaking of what I'm seeing though, you got some great pictures on your wall, and I can't help but like notice them.
Yeah, the Tut, a client of mine gave that to me. And I lived in New York. I had a very wealthy client, and I used to give her Reiki. And one day, after she said we were leaving together from her apartment, and she said, "Come for a walk with me." And we walked down 57th Street, and we went to this store, and we went in, and she said, "You like that?" And I said, "Yeah," and she bought it. Uh, this one over here with the person with the large head and eyes, a psychic drew that for me. She was a psychic and an artist, and she was drawing the people that she saw around me, and that was one of them. You can't see it over here, but it's more like a George Adamski thing. There's the bell-shaped craft, and those are two Palladium beings. There's a woman, a red-haired woman, and a guy with really, really white hair, blonde guy. So they're like the Nordic people. And this over here, I bought from someone a print. It's a human looking person. He's brown skinned. He's got big, you would not know that he was an extraterrestrial. He looks human. He's brown skinned, bald head, and he's got a big crystal in front of him. And he's got some ET writing around there. And you can see he's on a ship. And those are the portholes. There's a planet behind him, and I was fascinated with that. I just had to have that. And there's some extraterrestrial writing on it. And even at the bottom of the picture here, it glows in the dark, but it's some extraterrestrial writing there the artist put on there.
Oh, that's
So yeah,
awesome.
thank you. This is my office. I got a Reiki table here, and I got some books and pictures and plants and stuff. Yeah.
No, I like it. We have a tendency to buy a lot of the art in Roswell.
Yeah.
There's this really cool place. The UFO, was it the black or the UFO spacewalk? But it's all black light, so all the art like glows in the dark.
It
It's so
glows.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very retro, right?
Yeah. Well, I know our time's running low, so we'll definitely have to have you back on because like
I was
we've
gonna
just kind of
say,
like
listen,
scratched the surface.
let's do it again.
Yeah, for sure. I've really enjoyed this. I've been looking forward to it since we set it up. So really, really appreciative that you were able to join us tonight. One thing I want to make sure is we
Yeah.
let the viewers know where they can find you and where they can
Yeah.
pick up your books.
Well, they can get the books on Amazon or on Barnes and Nobles. Just type in Reverend Michael J. Carter. My email is Reverend Michael J.S. Carter at gmail.com. I have a Facebook fan page, Reverend Michael J. Carter. I have another page, Reverend Michael J.S. Carter. Either way, I will respond to you. If you send me an email, I will respond. I have a website, but I hardly ever use it. It's reverendmichaeljscarter.com. And what else can I tell you very quickly? I'm going to be in Michigan again in September. I just about a month ago, I had shot something last summer with on History Channel. It's called America History's Greatest Mysteries with
Oh,
Lawrence
really?
Fishburne. With Lawrence Fishburne
I love
as
that
the
show.
host, and they did something on the Phoenix Lights because it was
Oh,
the 25th anniversary. So hold on,
oh
let
man,
me.
we will have to get Alan when you
Okay,
come back on because
they
the
did a
one that,
great job.
yeah, the one that lived on the Navajo reservation was in Phoenix and he saw the Phoenix lights.
Oh, well, yeah, yeah. Tell
So,
him it's season 4, episode 5, History's Greatest Mysteries. Lawrence Fishburne, who I did not know was a UFO enthusiast. he's really heavy into UFOs. I heard they also did something on Roswell
Yeah.
on this show that was like the definitive. But it's season 4, episode 5, History's Greatest Mysteries, the Phoenix Light. Check it out. I usually don't watch myself, believe it or not. And my wife who's new to all this, she said, I want to watch it and I want you to sit here with me. And
Yeah.
I did, and they did a great job. Lynn Katai, she's been keeping this going. So check it out. And yeah, just let's look for some dates.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, for
Oh,
sure. And like I said, I'll try to get Alan on so we can talk
yeah,
Phoenix Lights too, because
yeah.
that would be
It was a
fantastic.
great show. I learned a
Yeah.
lot just by doing it.
Yeah. No, thank you. Oh man, I'm excited.
Yeah, yeah, check it out. So I'm wishing you guys a wonderful rest of the week, and thanks for having me on, and just keep on keeping on, brother. Don't let them take away your joy,
Yes, no, we're pretty
I'll
good
try.
at staying positive.
and get some sleep, which is what I
Yeah.
have to do.
Yeah.
So, so I hope to hear from you. We can
Mm,
set
Oh, we
something up this week or when I get back.
yeah, no, I'll send you an email now. We can start working on that. But
All right.
yeah, no, thank you again, and you have a wonderful night, and we hope you have a wonderful trip.
Okay, y'all. Yeah, it's my honeymoon.
Oh,
Going for a
well,
week.
congrats. Yeah.
Honeymoon. Got married in November, and now we're going on a honeymoon.
Well, hey,
nice.
All right.
where you going?
The British Virgin Islands.
Ooh, lucky, lucky.
I haven't been to the Caribbean in 25 years, and my wife hasn't been at all. She's been on like a boat, and they let you off, and you go buy trinkets, and then you come back on. So it's going to be a first for both of us. I mean, I used to travel a lot to the islands. I'm a beach bum, but it'll be nice seeing it with her.
Awesome, awesome. Well, you enjoy that. I'm sure it'll be a wonderful time, and we'll talk to you here soon.
I'll see you in a little over a week.
All right, we'll see
All
you.
right, brothers. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Once again, we want to say thank you to Michael for joining us on this awesome episode of Culz Interviews. We definitely had so much fun talking to him about so many different topics, and now, hey, we know there's a brand new awesome episode of History's Greatest Mysteries featuring him and talking about the Phoenix Light, something we've talked about on the channel thanks to Alan's experience. So yeah, we'll probably do a review on that. We're definitely going to talk to Michael again, and until then, though, make sure to go to the description below and check out all the links and help support Michael. Some great books, and like we said, some awesome episodes, so go check those out. Until next time, though, if you want to see more Culz interviews, click that link to your left. For more about what we're doing here at Culz Paranormal, click that link to your right. And don't forget to hit that like and give us a subscribe. And let us know. Have you read either of Michael's books?